I just got one of the most disturbing messages on Field, and I felt the need to share it with you. So as you guys know, I am a submissive, and unfortunately, I only date men. And more recently, I have been trying to connect with consistent BDSM partners. I connected with this dominant on Field. He was an experienced dominant who had a space that he used. He had all the toys and things, and he was someone that I was very open to connecting with. So I sent him a series of questions. I say, important distinctions for me. When you say you're polyamorous, what does that mean? Because a lot of people say they're poly when they're really unicorn hunters. I say, what is your experience with Black women? Because I am not into race play and don't intend on being into it with you. This was a white man. He says, I say, what is your experience with transgender women? Because I don't want to be your first introduction. I frankly can't get turned on or feel submissive towards men. I have to educate about that at least. Then I ask him, where do you fall politically? Because for me, if I'm going to be submissive towards a white man, which is already dicey, right? I need to really understand where your politics are. You know, unfortunately, there are far too many white conservative men who love people like me. So I don't want to be in that situation. And that's why I asked that question. Then I, asked him some more stuff about BDSM because I was really just trying to get the specific. Here are his answers. He says, my nesting partner has been in my life for 10 years. We've been poly for that long. I'm no stranger to the lifestyle scene. In fact, it's hard for me to find other like-minded people. That's why you stand out. He says, I've had many interracial relationships at the same time as being with her. It wasn't an issue. She has a couple of different Black men that she enjoys, and I've never had a problem with it. He says, so if you're concerned about how poly I am or if my partner would be an issue, there is nothing for you to worry about there. But of course, I was already kind of worried about this. When he says that his partner, who is a white woman, has a couple of different Black men that she enjoys, very clearly, I was starting to get the sense that Black men exist in her life as sort of these sex toys that she occasionally enjoys. There's been this ongoing discourse on here about Black men and their relationships with white women. Being in the BDSM community, other adult alternative lifestyle spaces, there are a lot of Black men who get off on being racially degraded. And I'm not going to say there aren't Black women who do either, because I'm sure there are. I am positive there are. I've never met them. Whereas my experience with a lot of Black men in the spaces that I've been in is that for a lot of them, I would honestly say for most of them, keeping in mind that I live in Los Angeles, that is a very central part of their sexuality. They get off on being the BBC. They get off on the idea of coming in and having sex with a white man's woman. And that is what it is, right? To the point where it's kind of hard for me to find Black men who don't do that shit, but that's another video for another day. He says, I am non-political. I don't like politics and I try to stay away from the negative information all the way around. Not a fighter in that sense. I know who I don't like, but I don't know enough about any of it to give a real opinion. So I don't. Now, I did read that and I was like, okay, so I'm not interested, because in my personal experience, when men say that they're not political, they're conservatives. Always. They're almost always conservative. I mean, mind you, also, I didn't mention this guy is in his 50s. Yes, I have daddy issues. Don't come for me. To get to 50 plus and not have an opinion about politics, you're lying. You're lying. You're bullshitting me. You're either bullshitting me or you live a life that is so privileged that you have been able to turn a blind eye to all of the bad things happening in society. And I'm so sorry, but if I am going to share my body and intimacy with a white man, it is going to be with a white man who's willing to punch a fucking Nazi. And those are men who are going to be overtly political. They are going to be men who have an opinion. Not having an opinion, not knowing much about it is one of the most unattractive things you can possibly say to me, right? But it gets worse. So then he says, me and my partner are both very LGBT friendly. We both have several transgender friends. That is solidly not an issue. You are a gorgeous transgender. There are a lot of train wrecks out there, and you're not one of them. Now, this is something that I hear from men all the fucking time. Men are constantly, when they're trying to approach me, doing this thing where they're like, you're pretty normal. You're not like the weird crazy transgenders out there, which is like funny because like I am a weirdo. But anyway, because I am read as cis and because I have body, because I clearly present a certain way, there are a lot of men who will hold me above other transgender women. And for me, that will always consistently be a red flag. Because in my experience, men who say this are just a few bad conversations away from calling me a man, right? And I know that that's almost inevitable. So for me, when I read this shit, I don't do the pick Misha thing and say, oh my God, you know, he likes me or whatever. I say, oh, you're a fucking transphobe. And really what these people, when they say this, what they really mean is that they have a couple of people who don't have a backbone, who spend time with them, and they tolerate those people as long as they don't get too political. Anyway, it gets worse. Then he says, I'm answering these questions point by point. I love the smell, taste, and vibe of Black people. It's a turn on that's kind of hard to explain. I'm also really into the contrast of skin tone. It's hot to me. I would never be ashamed to be seen with a Black woman. I was seeing one for about 2 years that used to go to all of my shows until she moved away. This guy's in a selfish way. I'm trying to replace that because not having someone like that in my life kind of feels empty. Now, first and foremost, I asked this guy these questions because he asked me out to dinner. And I was, before I got these answers, very open to going to dinner with him. He was a Dommy McDomerson who had all of the things. He was clearly experienced, clearly had somewhat of a reputation, right? Like very clearly had a lot of the things that I would quickly, superficially look at and say, yeah, that guy's probably that guy's probably a good player, right? Maybe, I don't know. But I'm so glad that I asked those questions. I'm so glad that I asked him those questions because I don't think I would have known how he actually feels had I not asked those questions. And so I want everyone online right now who is, trying to meet people to really kind of collect a list of your like absolute deal breakers and things that you will absolutely never settle for. Because I'm so glad I had those on hand because it really prevented me from having a bad experience.